General Petraeus, 37 years a soldier, 10 years at the KKR Institute, which I'm just about to ask you about, now an author. Welcome to Doha.
Great to be back, and frankly, it's great to be back in a very different time from when I was the commander of U.S. Central Command. As many of you will know, the forward headquarters of CENTCOM is out at Al Udeid Air Base, not far outside Doha. When I was privileged to be the commander, we had 250,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, 2.5 wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, and the pirates off Somalia. And now peace is broken out, and it's great to be back.
We were discussing off-site, and my reckoning is that you were the first person to have that many people since Alexander the Great arrived here.
I don't know about that, but it is good to be back. And it's nice to see the rapprochement, frankly, between the Gulf states, between certain Gulf states and Israel, ceasefire in Yemen, discussions across the Gulf with Iran and so forth. Touch wood that this all turns out well.
Do you think, let's start on that, and we'll come back to the actually, let's start on risk. You've done the KKR Institute for 10 years now.
Yep.
How has risk changed?
Well, it's changed dramatically. I think we've seen seismic, profound change. When I joined KKR a decade ago after being the director of the CIA, the world was described, I think, as benign globalization.
Yeah.
The barriers to the flow of capital, investment, trade, economics in general were all gradually being reduced. Global trade was going up at an angle like that. 10 years later, we're in an era of renewed great power rivalries. The barriers to trade, investment, capital flows are all going up. And globalization has become slowbalization. There's still a gradual increase in global trade in aggregate, although a lot of it is regional now rather than truly global. So it's quite a profound change.
Do you see China as the biggest risk now?
Well, I think the continued rise of China and then the friction that has evolved between the U.S. and China, the West and China, frankly, is the single biggest issue that has led to this, but certainly the resurgence of Russia, the brutal invasion of Ukraine, all of these are factors that have, again, returned us to an era of great power rivalries.
Let's do one more thing on China. Do you think, when you look at China, and you talk to a lot of companies about this, do you now see a decoupling with China as inevitable?
No, not at all. In fact, we think decoupling is not possible. In fact, last year, the U.S. and China had the greatest trade that they've ever had. China is the #3 trading partner for the U.S. behind our two continental, same, U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement partners, again, of Canada and Mexico. And we're the largest trading partner for China. So again, decoupling is not feasible. Selective decoupling is taking place, however. De-risking, I think, is how the EU head terms it and so forth. And so certainly there are various issues, there are various sectors, there are these that involve dual use, military as well as civilian, certain high technology areas. We think that there will probably be an outbound investment regime established in the United States. I mean, this is what the KKR Global Institute focuses on, perhaps more than anything else, is trying to understand where is the relationship between the West and China going, because, again, geopolitical risk, when I first joined KKR and established the Global Institute, this is what we did when we invested in the former Yugoslavia for the first time, or Africa, or even Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Philippines, various other Southeast Asian countries. It wasn't what we did in the major economies of the Pacific or Europe or what have you. Now it is everywhere, and there are implications for what's going on for almost every investment that takes place. They all touch in some way either some China relationship or also the implications of the Russian war on Ukraine.
We'll come to Russia in just a second. But on China, in the end, surely the biggest risk is Taiwan. What kind of probability do you put on the Chinese?
I think it is still unlikely. We get a vote, if you will, we, the West, collectively, the U.S. Deterrence is what we are seeking. And deterrence is founded on two elements. A potential adversary's assessment of your capabilities on the one hand, and your willingness to employ them on the other, It's incumbent on us and of our allies and partners together to make sure that we are transforming our capabilities, hardening, improving resilience, all the rest of this in the Indo-Pacific region, as it is now termed, and then also making sure there aren't doubts about our willingness to employ the capabilities we have without trying to be provocative. There's no desire to provoke something. The desire is to prevent it, to deter it, to dissuade it. And I think, again, that in general, that is working.
Back to the big one at the moment, Ukraine. Sitting, I think, in this chair yesterday, Viktor Orban's told me, when I challenged him about Hungary's relative reticence in helping Ukraine, he just said simply, Ukraine can't win. Do you agree with that?
I think he's entirely on the wrong side of what will be history in that regard. I think that Ukraine is going to show what can happen when you have well-trained, well-equipped, now with Western equipment, substantial additional forces that are well-led, taking on forces that have now been beaten up over 15 months of combat. They've been in the line continuously, the Russians. They have taken enormous losses, many times the losses in the first 15 months of this war that they took an entire decade in Afghanistan, many times. They have individual replacements. That's not the way you have cohesive units. They're not well trained, they're not well equipped, they're not well led. In fact, the command climate is abusive. And they're about to execute the most challenging of all missions, which is to withdraw in contact with the enemy because they're defending forward of their defensive lines. And they're not going to do well. In fact, I think they will crumble. In some cases, they will collapse. The question is, how broadly is that crumbling and collapse? Keep in mind that last year, when the Ukrainians succeeded so impressively in the offensive south of Kharkiv in the east, at a certain point they ran out, they culminated